My head was all over the place. I was fuming. I was angry. It was the most I'd ever been any time in my career, and I was falling out with people left, right and centre.
Got pulled off after, 25, 30 minutes or something in the first game of the World Cup, and you're thinking, that's the only game I ever play in the World Cup. Going to be thinking about that for a pretty long time.
I thought that was a wrong call from him. Didn't do us any harm. We had a fantastic sort of World Cup, but I was distraught. Mick captained us in every game.
And when the penalty shootout came round, it just had this feeling that, why aren't I there? I want to be there. That's one of the things that I should be. I'm good at that.
Tell me about, how you almost went to Arsenal, because Arsene Wenger was keen to sign you, wasn't he? Which must have been potentially a dream move.
Yeah, even before I signed for Fulham, I had a chance to go to Juventus and Bayern Munich. And as appealing as they are, and someone would probably listening going, what? You chose Fulham over Bayern Munich and Juventus? And it does sound crazy. But I was, let's not forget, at Juve at the time was Buffon the number one. At Bayern was interesting, but Bayern, Oliver Kahn just retired. Michael Rensing was guaranteed to be number one. That was very clear from the president, and that I was clearly going there as a number two. And I didn't want to go anywhere as a number two at that time in my career. So going to Fulham was the logical thing. And being at Fulham and having the opportunity to go to Arsenal, I remember the phone call. It was 3 days before we played our opening game against Germany at the World Cup in South Africa in 2010. Roy Hodgson called me and said, "Look, don't really want to disturb you, but we've had a call from the Arsenal," as he always calls them, and he said they've made an offer for you, or they've showed their interest in you. They want to sign you. I thought it'd be right to call you and ask you if you wanted to go. And I was like kind of like stumbling a little bit, going, well, trying to think, okay, of course I want to go, but how do I say this without being disrespectful and making sure that I pay the right respect, and told Roy how much I enjoyed being at Fulham and how much I enjoyed working under him and the success that we'd had and almost winning Europa League, and it's all that to Roy, Gaffer, like you said, it's the Arsenal. And there's a chance to compete at the very, very highest level. They want to sign me as a number one, play Champions League football, something I'd never done at that stage of my career. And I was 37 years old. And it was almost like a pinching myself moment as well, going, hang on, how the hell are they even interested in me at this age? But then believing in my ability, going, yeah, I could go there and do really, really well. I know I can. To going, oh, this will be amazing. And he said, okay, I get it. I thought you'd say that. He said, all right, we'll make it happen. We'll just make sure that we get what we believe is right for you. Plus, Mike Kelly will work and make sure we get the right goalkeeper in, and we'll make it happen. So I was delighted. Absolutely, chuffed. Could just think about now World Cup. Didn't help we lost the first game against Germany 4-0. But that on the side, unfortunately for me, the thing that killed my move ultimately was that Roy left then about 3 weeks later and went to Liverpool. Before anything had been done with Arsenal. And Mike Kelly was still at the club, but the club were in limbo. They were trying to sign Martin Jol as a manager. That kept dragging, because he was Ajax manager at the time. It kept dragging on and dragging on and dragging on. And we only signed Mark Hughes 2 weeks before the start of the season. And Arsenal were kind of there, were interested. They made an offer. Then Fulham turned it down. And my first conversation with Mark Hughes was finally announced as manager was, Gaffer, nice to meet you. Sure there's been an offer made for me. I desperately want to go. I said, you of all people can understand. At this stage in my career, played a club like the Arsenal, opportunity to play European football, opportunity to contest for titles. And he went, oh, well, no, I haven't heard anything about it. And I was just like, that's where the whole roller coaster of events happened. And he avoided me like the plague as much as he possibly could. The CEO played all sorts of games with me. And in the end, I even ended up having a meeting with the late Al Fayed. And he was very adamant that unless Arsenal paid £10 million for me, I wasn't going anywhere. Which in hindsight, it's a compliment. At the time, I was furious because it was just crazy to ask, say that, they pay 10 million, I can go at 37 years old. And my understanding, they'd offered already 4, which was I thought was more than generous for that stage. And unfortunately, they wouldn't let me go. And then after finally on numerous occasions trying to have a conversation with Mark Hughes about it, finally him giving me some sort of information that the only way he was going to let me go is if they brought in a replacement for me in time. And then I said to him, okay, have you got one in mind? And he said, yes, I do. And it was Shay Given, he said to me. And I said, well, have you got any other options in case that doesn't work? He goes, no. He says, if he doesn't come, then no, you can't go. So basically that was done and dusted. It didn't, he for whatever reason, he didn't come. And the way I found out that my chance of leaving was watching transfer deadline day on Sky Sports News and seeing Mark Hughes leave the training ground and at midday and them say, and some of the Sky reporter asking him about, so are there any more transfers coming in or out of the club? He said, no, that's it. We're done. No one's going. No one's leaving anymore. And that's how I found out that I wasn't going anywhere.
You must have, look, this is a chance to go to Arsenal, one of the biggest clubs in Europe, and play for Arsene Wenger as well. You must have had an incredibly bitter feeling about that.
I was really tough. It was one of the most difficult times in my career. I was angry. I was furious because I felt that I gave everything to the club. I just felt it was dealt with really badly again. I don't think the club dealt with it really well. I don't think the manager dealt with it very well at the time. They just was like, the more we ignore him, the more we avoid him, hopefully it will just die down. And it took me a while to get my head right because I was furious.
I take it you and Mark Hughes were not best buddies then.
Yeah, look, of course I was angry at him, but I didn't hold it against him in the end because I get it. You know, you're a manager and, you know, you've got a goalkeeper that you obviously has a lot of Premier League experience and I'd like to think did well for the club, and that's why Arsenal was even interested in the first place. And if we're going to lose him, we need to replace him for like or someone even better, whatever it is. And if I can't do that, then no, I'm not going to let him go. So I kind of get it. If I put myself in his position, and I get it. I was just more annoyed about the lack of perceived effort to allow it to happen. They just seemed like for me as the player, there seemed like no effort whatsoever. And that's what hurt me because it was like, this is my chance. This is my one and only chance to go to a club and be a number one at a massive club. Yeah.
Was it harder to focus on your game after that? I mean,
absolutely.
Did it affect your form?
I didn't play for another 4 or 5 weeks. My head was all over the place. I was fuming. I was angry. It was the most I'd ever been any time in my career, and I was falling out with people left, right, and centre. I was falling out with people left, right, and centre, just trying to get out of the club. And it all dies down. And look, I love my time at Fulham. The last 2 years definitely weren't as enjoyable. But certainly those first 3 years were amazing. Okay. I mean, the first 2 years under Roy was outstanding. It was just the group of players that we had, the manager, the assistant, Ray Lewington, Mike Kelly, the staff, everything about the club was incredible at the time.
The next one, I think, is back to England. And it's probably actually, the game you mentioned isn't a game that will live long in the memory of a lot of England fans because it was against the USA in the World Cup. But I think that's the backstory, isn't it, that you played in that when maybe you shouldn't have done.
Yeah, it was the World Cup and first game. Obviously, you dream of making your debut in a World Cup for England. Got over there and had a pretty bad illness for probably a week before the first game. Since we got there, I was in my room on my own, wasn't allowed out of the room, lost about 4 or 5 kilos. Was trying to eat after the boys had gone, so I didn't pass it on to anyone. No idea what it was. Didn't train and the manager obviously had in his head that was the team he wanted to play, and obviously, you know, you're never going to turn that down. Do you think you can do it? 100%, of course I can do it. Picked up an early booking, and obviously didn't want to risk me getting sent off, and got pulled off after 25, 30 minutes or something in the first game of the World Cup, and you're thinking, if that's the only game I ever play in the World Cup, I'm going to be thinking about that for a pretty long time. Didn't play the second game. Things didn't go too well, and then it was an important third game and managed to create the goal for JD again, I think it was. And we went through, and that was nice that happened, and it was unfortunate, but it wasn't wasn't the best first game in a World Cup.
Yeah,
Ever.
it's an impossible decision, though, isn't it? You're always going to say,
Yeah,
yes, Gaffer, I want to play.
I think I trained a couple of days before and I actually did feel okay myself, but obviously you're not going to be your level. I wasn't struggling or anything like that. I did feel fine, but I was coming out the other end of it. But, losing 4 or 5 kilos in weight, it's probably not going to be. But ultimately, it's the manager's decision. And if he wants you to play, you're never going to say no if you feel like you can. It's if he thinks it's the right thing for the team, he's got all the information and you do what you can.
You went on to play in the last 16 game against Germany, didn't you, as well?
Yeah.
And that was the infamous, the Frank Lampard ghost goal, which almost bust the net, but was deemed not to be over the line.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the frustrating things, actually, because you look at that game and you think, I think it was 2-0 down, and then we get one, I think, didn't we? And then Lamps does that. And my viewpoint, I'm playing on the right wing. I'm pretty sure the linesman's about 5 yards to my right with a better view than me, and I could see it was over from where I was. So he's got a better angles, not given. And then obviously we know what happened after that. But you think 2-0 up to 2-2 going in just before half time, you think things could have been a lot different there.
Yeah, you've got the momentum then, haven't you?
Yeah, and it's a game changer.
Coming soon, football's greatest eras with Nicky Butt and Paul Scholes, a new show where the pair tell their best stories about Manchester United's greatest period.
I'm Nicky Butt.
And I'm Paul Scholes.
This is our new show
where we take you inside the greatest era
under the greatest manager
at the best club in the world.
Come with us inside the dressing rooms and onto the pitch. I think I was the only person in Premier League history to score a goal and run off and the camera go on Eric. The camera go on Eric.
As we tell you all about our teammates and the rivalries.
I'm pretty sure that was the game where Robbie Fowler scored the goal and not Gary off the ball.
I mean, Nev, what's he doing? I mean, we know Rob, he's a great lad, unbelievable player, but Nev Scott, just what's Nev doing? I mean, he's just fell
he
down
got himself in that wrong position.
Fell down like an 82-year-old on his Zimmer frame.
This is football's greatest eras.
This seems to be something of a theme, and I didn't mean it to be like this, but in international terms, Ron Greenwood was the England manager, and he overlooked you for the captaincy for the 82 World Cup, didn't he?
Thanks,
that
Jeff.
was an irritation as well.
Thanks for reminding me. Listen, it was at one of those times in my life, 1982, European Cup winners, 1981, going to Spain. I was probably the only one of the back four who could call the position their own. I was the mainstay. Ron Greenwood had trusted me with the captaincy when Kevin Keegan was ever not available. And when he was injured or he had a commitment, because the first time he gave me the captaincy against Bulgaria, we had to replay it on I think it was a Thursday night, because it was called off from fog. Give me the captaincy. I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely delighted. Great honour. And so then I captained England about 6 times. So we goes to the World Cup. Ron's asked me, who do you think should play alongside you, which had options. And it was Terry Butcher. Terry was this new up-and-coming leader, and you could see that in Terry. But I can remember on the day before the opening game against France in Bilbao, and I'm there, and you're playing. I knew I was playing. That might sound arrogant, but I knew I was that one player. So the day before the game, and when you get the arm round the shoulder as a player, probably you wouldn't know, Jeff, but you get the arm round the shoulder as a player before the game, I thought, I'm playing, and I know that. Why is he doing this? And his words, I found it and was, for me, I loved Ron Greenwood, absolutely loved him, but he goes, listen, Phil, over the captaincy tomorrow against France. I've been thinking about it, and I think it's going to be Mick Mills' last tournament. He said, so I'm going to make Mick Mills captain. He was captain of Ipswich at the time, but I was captain of Liverpool. And I went like that. And straight away I thought, I never said anything. I was distraught. I was really gutted. And I thought, Ron, this might be my last tournament. You never know, because I was like sort of 28. And lo and behold, it was my last tournament. So Mick Mills lines up against France in Bilbao. It was like sort of 34 degrees heat. It was, and I'm looking at Mick leading the team out. I was so jealous. So this was a World Cup. This was a great time for me. And he overlooked me because of a little bit of sympathy for Mick Mills. And I thought that was a wrong call from him. Didn't do us any harm. We had a fantastic sort of World Cup. We only conceded 1 goal in 5 games. So, but I was distraught. Mick captained us in every game.
You know, obviously Glenn was the England manager. I remember you scored a hat-trick, didn't you? It was against Russia for England B before the World Cup squad for 98 was selected. And you weren't in it. Reflecting on it, can you understand that now?
I mean, that was a massive blow to me in my career. I think I realised that was kind of my last chance to go to a World Cup. I was 28, I think 29 at the time, something like that. And I'd given it a real good go. So the back end of that season leading up to the World Cup, I'd finished really strongly at Southampton, scored a lot of goals. And then we had the B game. I'd played in the qualifier at Wembley the year before against Italy when we lost at home to Italy, and I'd come in for a little bit of stick that day. Glenn came in for a bit of stick for picking me and us losing the game, and I was kind of made a bit of the whipping boy really for that defeat. But yeah, that game against Russia was probably one of the best 90-minute performances I ever had in my career. You know, it wasn't just the 3 goals. The rest of the game, I felt like I'd played as good as I could possibly play. And so when the squad got announced, it was actually a squad of 30 that he announced first of all, which went out to La Manga. And then he dropped 6 or 7 of the players from that squad while they were out in La Manga. And when he picked the squad of 30 and I wasn't in the squad of 30, I was like, wow. And I was really shocked. And then I kind of thought about it. And I thought, okay, he's not put me in the 30 because maybe he's going to take Gaza and he doesn't think that me and Gaza can be in the same team or squad or whatever. And then when they went to La Manga and then he dropped Gaza as one of the other players, I was like, wow. I think that was a bigger blow to me than actually being left out of the 30. Seeing Gaza be left out the squad as well, to see what we were left with in terms of creative ability in that midfield.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have thought that Glenn would have been a huge supporter of creative midfield players, having been such a fantastic creative midfield player himself. And the irony was, wasn't it, that we went out on penalties against Argentina, and David Batty, who'd never taken a penalty in his life, took the decisive penalty and had it saved. And, you know, I couldn't help but think that history might have, it sounds daft, history might have been different if you'd have been there and had have been taking that penalty instead of David Batty.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have had more chance of scoring the penalties than David Batty. I don't think there's any argument about that. You just don't know how the games would have gone. I do remember sitting there watching the game. I know exactly where I was. I was sat with Franny Benali in his house watching that game. And when the penalty shootout came round, it just had this feeling that, why aren't I there? I want to be there. That's one of the things that I should be. I'm good at that. And yeah, that was not a nice moment to sit and watch that, watch us go out on penalties again.
Now, thanks for watching Football's Greatest on YouTube. But can I ask you please to hit that subscribe button? That way you won't miss any of our future episodes, and we have some great guests coming up on the show.